Hello everyone, I'm glad to have you back. In our last two examples, we saw how we could create classes, and then we also saw how we could create classes that used an inheritance. Basically, we could inherit a class from another class, from a parent to a base class, and then we also saw how we could use the super keywords to override a method such that we could borrow from an existing method within a class. If you're kind of like new to object-oriented programming, please do check out these lessons before we move on our new lesson. So in today's lesson, what we're going to discuss about are modules in Python. So I have a little slide here. Believe me, it's going to be a very short slide, so I'll just turn on the slide and we'll just get running. So I'll just start the slideshow and then begin the explanation. So a module is nothing more than a file in Python, but the file does something else. A module contains pieces of code or pieces of code that has been written by one person or a team or group of individuals to solve a specific problem. That might not be really necessarily specific. For instance, we could be learning how to create modules and we might not actually have a problem there. But the intention of modules is to create a piece of code that solves a specific problem, and you could distribute that problem to the whole world if it's something, that will benefit everyone. So for instance, imagine a module that solved a problem of working with dates and times in Python. So imagine a team of programmers, they've spent years or months solving, date time issues or maybe a scientific research or whatever it is. Once they have that module available, which is a Python file that contains all the code, it contains all the classes, all the object, all the instances. They can actually distribute this to the whole world to download. So what platforms and where can they get this from? Well, Python has a repository called the PyPy, and with PyPy you can actually see it's called the Python Package Index, which is a website where anyone who has created a module can distribute that module so people can see it, download, comment, and then work on that project. Let's quickly look at PyPy so you can actually see what I'm talking about. So I'll just jump out of our presentation right here and I'll open my web browser. So this is PyPy. If we just actually scroll down, you can actually see a list of projects right here, and we can actually search some projects. Let's say, for instance, I want to search about a module called Pygame. If I search for this, I'm actually going to see Pygame, and if I click on that, we can read up on that module. And for instance, it says here that Pygame is a free and open source called platform library for the development of multimedia applications like video games using Python. So that's what this module actually does, and this module contains hundreds if not thousands of lines of code that would help you in writing computer programs. So we actually know about PyPy, but how do we install this in Python? Like, how do we install this module in Python? It's super simple. I'll just open my command line by pressing the Windows R key and typing cmd, and I'll press the return key. So if I want to install Pygame, all I need to do is to just follow the instructions to install it right here. It says pip install Pygame, so I'll just do the same. So I'll say pip install Pygame. I'll just make this a bit bigger. And then once I hit that return key and I have an active internet connection, it's going to check to see if that's installed. I already have Pygame installed, so it's not going to do that again. But this is the version 2.1.2 is the version of this module I have. So we just saw what modules are, and then to use that module I have to import that module in a Python project by just importing the module called Pygame, which is installed in my Python library. So how do we create our own modules? Well, I'll just show you a simple example of how you can create your own personal modules, and then you can save them locally and then import that Python module. To use a module, you have to import the Python module. So what I'll do is to create a folder that will contain two Python files, and then I'll be able to call a module from another location. Let's just see that example in action. So I'll just do a Windows R again to run my command line, and you could just simply jump on your desktop and create two folders and then create a Python file in one of the folders, but I'll be using Visual Studio Code for this example. So what I want to do is to change to my desktop, and I'll just see desktop, And once I've changed to my, let me just make this bigger so we can all see this. Once I've changed to my desktop, I'm going to make a folder. So I'll say MD module learning. So I've actually made a directory right now, which just means it's a folder called module learning. And I'll change to my module learning directory. If I hit the return key, I'm in that folder now. So what I'm also going to do is to create a folder called code files. So I'll say code, I'll do mkdir, which is the make directory as well. So I'll just call that code underscore files. So I have a folder called code underscore files now. So I'll just change to that folder called code underscore files. So now that I'm in that code underscore files, what I'm going to do is to run Visual Studio Code directly in this code underscore files folder. So to do that, I'll just say code space dot and hit the return key. And I should have a Visual Studio should open up right now, and we'll actually see this. I'll just maximize this. So one thing you should understand about Python is that you can call your script from other locations, which is why you have a module, right? So you have a main place where you have your program, and then you have another spot where you could actually create your own programs so that they can interrelate with each other. So I'll just go ahead and create a new Python file. I'll just call that the main.py because this is the main place I'm going to be creating the file. So I'll just do a main.py. So I have that Python file, and again I'll just create another Python file, and I'll just call that book.py. So basically what I want to do right now is to create a module that will allow us to display some basic information about a book. So let's just begin. So I'll just say program display info about a book, and we'll try and make our program object oriented. So I'm actually going to be using classes in this program's example. So I'll just say class book like so, and I'll create the init method. So I'll say def and it just to create that init method. Now this is auto completion. I don't want to use this, so I'll just get rid of this. I have my colon here. So in between, I'm going to create my self keyword. So I'll say self, and let's just make this big like so, and I'll pass in the book name. And then what else I need for the instance? I'll need an author, and I'll also create a sales like so, just for my book. And then I'll pass in the self dot book name is going to equal to book name, and I'll say the self dot the author equals the author, and I'll say the self dot sales is equal to the sales like so. So what I'm going to do now as well is to create a string method that's going to help me display the information. So I'll just do my str like so, and I'll pass in the keyword self. For every instance we create, we need to use the self to help that class, and I'll just say print, I'll just say book summary. I'll hit escape to get rid of that code's syntax highlighting, and I'll just hide this view for now. So what I'm going to do is just to return some information to the screen about our book author. So I'll say book author. So I'll pass in the self dot author. So the next thing I want to do is to pass in information about the book name. So I'll just say book name. So I'll pass in the self dot book underscore name and close that. And I'll also pass in the amount of sales. Basically, we want to know how many sales that book has made. So I'll just say self dot sales. I'll just use my auto completion just to have that, a bit faster. So what I'm also going to do is just create another one, just create another function about the author. So I'll just say author, or let's just say about book, and I'll pass in the self, self. I can't spell self again. All right, so let's print out some information here. So I'll print out the, let's just add something. Let's say an enchanting story about a young kid called Alex. That's it. So this is going to be my base class. Now what we actually can do is to go over here in our main Python file, and this is where the magic is actually going to happen. So what I'm going to do is to import my book. So I'm just going to say import book, and Python actually understands that book is a Python script that exists in this local folder. So this is actually our module. So we have a book module that contains a class that displays the information about an author, his name, and the number of sales that author has made, and it has a description about the book that prints out information called an enchanting story about a young kid called Alex. So that's what this module is doing. It's not an important module, but serious modules actually do a lot of heavy lifting and heavy work. So let's create the instance. So first, I'll just say, let's add a comment here, and I'll say importing the book module, like so. And the next thing we're going to do, let's create our instances of the book, which is that we're actually creating the real thing right now. So instances, creating instances of the book. So now I'm just going to say ebook 1. So I'm just going to say book dot the name of the class called book. Book is the name of the module, which is this Python file, and then I'll use the dot notation to access any functions that are in that book. So this time around, I'm accessing the name of the class. So right now, I'm going to pass in this information, and look, it's actually asking for the book name, and after we enter the book name, it's going to ask us about other information. So for the book name, I'll just say Arabian Nights, because I am so not creative right now. So I'm going to write the author. I'll just say Muhammad Ali, and then the sales. So I'll just say he sold 1,000,000 copies. I don't know how many zeros that is, but let's just say he sold 1,000,000 copies. And what I want to do is to just print out information here. So I'll just say print the ebook 1, like so. And then if we want to access the methods of the class, so I'll just say accessing methods of the class. Since we have our ebook 1 object, so I'm just going to call ebook 1 dot, and we could actually see a method of ebook 1. So it's called about book. So if we pass in about book, what it's going to do is to check out our book and then see our about book and then do what this function tells it to do. And to run this program, we have to run it from the main method. So this is our main program entry point. So let's actually run this. I'll just make this bigger, and I'll get rid of this debug console. So we can actually see we have a summary of the book. I actually told it to print out book summary from here. So that's why it's printing out this book summary, and it's actually returning the, let's see that again. It's returning the book author, the book name, and the number of sales. And then right here where we called the book summary, right here in our main method, where we said accessing the method class about the book, it printed out information about this book. So as you can see, each time we're working with Python, we usually start off like this. If we have a module, for instance, I can import Pygame like we saw in that example. I could say import Pygame like so, and then Pygame is going to be here, and then what I can do is initialize Pygame. I say pygame.init like so. We've initialized the Pygame module I told you guys about. So if we save this and run it, usually Pygame returns the web link for Pygame as a that's quite strange. All right, good. Yeah, so it actually does this. Pygame returns this as a kind of side effect. That means you actually have Pygame installed, but that's just by the way. So once you have a Python file, remember, you don't have to build your own modules. You can find out very interesting modules you can import into your Python project, and then you can begin to access the functions and methods that you've created or someone else has created. So as a quick wrap up, we created a Python script that contained a class about a book that prints the name, author, and the number of sales that author makes, and then it prints out some summary about the book. Then we created a main file where we could now start creating the objects of that book and then accessing the classes and methods. So here we actually created a variable object which is going to inherit from the book module. You can actually see it's telling us it's a module right here, and then we actually have a book right here, and then we actually have the module that is accessing the function in that module. So hopefully this has demystified what a module is, and you won't be scared about you won't be scared about hearing about modules and working with modules. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next lesson.